Hello, BookTube. Well, I'm back down here in puppy territory to continue with this mass market library tour. And as far as I can tell, I was rooting around here just a minute ago. It looks like this is the last stack of mass markets on this bottom shelf. And then we'll just go through the rest of the books on this bookcase, whatever they are, wherever I can pull them out. So we'll just finish this bookcase. But first, a stack of mass market paperbacks, starting with these old pocket paperbacks. I've praised them a few times when we've encountered them. They're really well made. They're hard to find now, of course, because they're, mass market paperbacks just in general are disappearing. But these are Alexander Woollcott. This is 2 copies of Long, Long Ago and 1 of While Rome Burns. Just humorous essays that he did that are, I don't know that I could even safely read these things anymore. So I don't know where you go from here. An Alexander Woollcott volume, a new volume, would be very nice. A nice big collection. You could do pretty much all his famous short form writing in one book. And I would love that. But anyway, in the meantime, I have these if I absolutely need to read them. I have a double so that I can destroy one of them. Then we've got... Oh my, okay, this is another author who has appeared in this library tour before. This is M. John Harrison, a very pretty paperback of Viraconium Nights. Viraconium is the pastel city, the afternoon culture's long in decline in a world that has forgotten how old it is. Just a magnificent fictional creation that Harrison created a long time ago. He's still going strong. He's still writing some of the best books of his career. But the Viraconium novels will always have a special place in my heart. They're such good fantasy. Okay, I think we've seen this before. Another copy of this must be here in this house somewhere. This is Hatred, Ridicule, or Contempt by Joseph Dean. This is a collection of libel cases in court, and some of them are very good. There's a very dry British wit all throughout the book. Okay. Wonderful. These are 2 short story collections of the great James Tiptree, 10,000 Light Years from Home and Warm Worlds and Otherwise. Just fantastic stuff. If you haven't read James Tiptree and you're a science fiction fan, you really should. Let's see. In Warm Worlds and Otherwise, we have I Have Come Upon This Place by Lost Ways, The Last Flight of Dr. Ain. The Girl Who Was Plugged In. The Night Blooming Saurian. And the Women Men Don't See, which is just great. It's just fantastic. And then and a lot of others too, and then in 10,000 Light Years from Home, we have, what? Do we have a table of contents here? No? Well, we have And I Awoke and Found Me Here on the Cold Hillside, which is really good. Some of them, this 10,000 Light Years from Home is probably my least favorite of her collections. Faithful to Thee, Terra, In Our Fashion. There's another one. I think this is the one that has the psychologist who wouldn't do awful things to rats. No, but it does have Beam Us Home. The final story in the collection is called Beam Us Home, and it's probably the ultimate Star Trek story, even though Star Trek is never mentioned and none of our characters are in it. Beam Us Home is it's a gift to Star Trek fans. Then what? Wow! Okay, this is an old Ballantine mass market of Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is the son of Tarzan, who is blonde. Imagine that. And, this is from these old. I wonder if this will credit the cover artist. No. Well, this is. I prefer. There's a later issue of Edgar Rice Burroughs with black borders, not white ones, and I prefer those. I like those paperbacks a lot better. But I had most of these originally and read them to powder, and now you never see them. So I'm glad I have this one. I have at least one of them, and I love the Son of Tarzan. In one of the reasons that I love it is kind of strange, especially given the time in which it was written almost a century ago. But it's the son of Tarzan, Korak, who falls in love with a young woman named Miriam, who is a remarkably realized character for Edgar Rice Burroughs and completely independent. and significantly more capable than most of the men in the book. So there are some great scenes where, for instance, when she's been captured and her captors are leading her along a trail, and it never occurs to them that she can reach up, swing herself into the tree canopy, and just simply disappear. It never occurs to them that they might be dealing with an athletic young woman, much less a young woman who's much more athletic than they are. And I really like it for that. I reread it about 5 years ago and was amazed how much I enjoyed it. Then we have an Oxford World Classic. This is The Civil War by Lucan, the long poem about the fight for supremacy, the end of Republican Rome and the start of Julius Caesar's reign. Then, perfect for March Mystery Madness, this is The Chinese Gold Murders by Robert Van Gulik. This is a Judge Dee mystery. Judge Dee is a medieval judge. He has a number of wives. He's a very calm and inscrutable figure who can see through a stone wall with enough time, as is said in Lord of the Rings about a completely different kind of character. Robert Van Gulik not only translated the original work, The Celebrated Cases of Judge Dee, but then he made the character into an ongoing character in a murder mystery series that is incredibly good. The Judge Dee mysteries are so wonderful. This was the University of Chicago Press, years and years ago, probably 30 years ago, brought them all out in these, I don't know if you can tell, in these square-ish mass markets. So you've got a normal mass market like that. These things are squatter and wider than a normal mass market. And they brought them all out this way. And I don't think I have any of them except this one. I think this might be the only one I have, which is terrible. I should make a point of trying to find these. And you know, so what about whether or not I want them in hardcover or a large collection? I should just find them in this volume, in this, you know, wherever I can. But if you find them, if you see, like, for instance, these Telltale, very, very distinctive white paperbacks, and you haven't read Judge Dee, he's really good. Then, oh, okay. All right, this is a perfect condition copy of The Journeys of McGill Fane, which has come up on this tour many, many times. It's an old science fiction series. This is book 2, Reefs. I've talked about it so much recently, I don't think I need to synopsize it again, but it's a terrific series. Lots and lots of fun. And I must have doubles now of every one of them. When I'm done with all of these mass markets, I'm going to put them all together. I'm going to look at them all and see just how many doubles I have and what I'm missing and all that sort of stuff. Okay, this is another thing that we've seen on this channel before. This is the Retief at Large. Another great old science fiction cover, another great old science fiction series by Keith Laumer about an action-oriented man in a very ponsified diplomatic corps. So his superiors are constantly rewording memos while he's punching aliens, and it ends up being a lot of fun. Then we have, we saw this just recently too. This is SPQR by John Maddox Roberts. This is the first volume in an ongoing murder mystery series set in ancient Rome. Very good stuff. Wears its research very lightly. The author knows a lot about his subject, but the books read with almost no exposition dumps at all, which is kind of amazing. This is The Fate of the Phoenix in a very old and battered mass market paperback. This may be the one that I read. This may be like my mass market paperback. Instead of all the duplicates that I got, this may be the one. This is the sequel to The Price of the Phoenix, which is and it's appalling. they're kind of, well, I don't know about appalling. The Price of the Phoenix is my favorite Star Trek novel, even though I won't make any claims for its literary power. And in that book, a villain named Omni discovers, sort of combines the Star Trek transporters with matter replicators and engram recorders in order to create a process by which a person can be completely duplicated. Not a fake, not a clone, not anything, nothing. The exact same person, only two. And he wants to sell the process, the Phoenix process, to the highest bidder. What do you think you're doing? And the Federation, of course, wants to stop him. And in the course of the first book, the natural plot development that you would expect does indeed happen. James Kirk is duplicated with the Phoenix process. And that first book wraps up. It leaves a couple of major things hanging, including the fate of Omni. And fans loved it. I was one of those fans, and I loved it too. We all just loved it. And hounded the authors, Sandra Marchek and Mirona Galbraith, ceaselessly until they made a sequel, which is much longer than The Price of the Phoenix, and which brings back everybody. The female Romulan commander, and Spock, and Kirk, and the other Kirk, and Omni, and it's just, it's just wonderful. I think this next one is Star Trek 2. Oh, yes, it is. Okay, this is a novelization by Diane Carey, who's my favorite Star Trek writer, of The Way of the Warrior from Deep Space Nine. It's an adaptation of a number of Deep Space Nine episodes in which the Klingons break the generations of peace that have existed between them and the Federation, and a state of war begins to exist between the Klingons and the Federation for the first time in living memory. And this book climaxes with the climax of that storyline on Deep Space Nine, a great episode in which the Klingons attack the space station, Deep Space Nine, and keep ramping up their attacks, and eventually attack the bridge of Deep Space Nine and engage our cast in hand-to-hand combat. Which is, if I remember correctly, and I remember I've read this many times, and I've seen that episode many times, Diane Carey doesn't do that moment justice. I think she was probably working off a script instead of a finished show. Because in the script, the fight on the bridge, the fight in the command center of Deep Space Nine is sloppy, and it doesn't have many dramatic beats to it. And in the great episode, it does. It's perfectly done. Perfectly done. Because it's a question. With any Star Trek bridge crew, with any center crew of Star Trek, on any of the iterations of Star Trek, you always wonder, okay, what would happen if this happened? If armed Klingons, armed with bat'leths, not phasers, were suddenly to engage our heroes in physical combat altogether, what would happen? Which bridge crew would come out the best in that? And I've had this discussion with Star Trek fans, and of course the answer is obvious, but not particularly fair. The Enterprise D, Captain Picard's Enterprise, would come out ahead, not only because Lieutenant Worf is Klingon, proficient in combat, but mainly because Picard has a super strong, super fast android in his crew who could just defeat all of the Klingons himself. He wouldn't need to worry about engaging anyone else. But then there's Star Trek Voyager, in which you have a 100-year Vulcan who's a weapons expert. And also a genetically and biologically enhanced Borg. And in Deep Space Nine, takes place at a time, as you can see on the cover, this takes place at a time where Worf is on the station. He is a member of Benjamin Sisko's crew, Captain Sisko. So he gets to fight Klingons. And, of course, part of that bridge crew is Kira Nerys, who was a guerrilla operator, a highly proficient military expert in the resistance against the Cardassian rule. And you also have Jadzia Dax, who's hundreds of years old, has fought many, many Klingons. And the scene is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. I wish, if I can find it, maybe I can link it down below. So there's not going to be anything left of the bathroom before this video is over. I recommend it because I recommend any Star Trek that Diane Carey wrote. She does a fantastic job. And then the last book for this last batch of mass markets is, oh goodness gracious, is a perfect condition old copy of a classic, literally, The Satires of Juvenal, my beloved Juvenal. These were translated by Hubert Creekmore for the old Mentor Classic line probably 50 years ago. 1963. So, and as I mentioned on this channel before, I am more and more fishy-eyed at the idea of English translations of Latin classics, especially poetry, and that certainly applies to Juvenal as well. So I might reread this, for the fun of it, but I would never, if I'm in the mood to read Juvenal, I just read Juvenal. I just take a little classical library down off the shelf and read Juvenal instead of reading somebody trying to deal with his meter in a totally alien language when the meter is so much a part of the point. So I don't know. I don't know why I would keep this. But anyway, even in English, I highly recommend the Satires of Juvenal. They give us virtually a Polaroid snapshot of what life was like in ancient Rome of Juvenal's day, and that's amazing. What a gift that is to have that. And that's it. That is the last stack of mass markets. So the next time we do this, when next we come back to this, I will pull out stuff and rearrange stuff so that I can get at the books we haven't done yet, whatever they are. So we'll continue then. In the meantime, I'll sign off for now. I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.